Hello YouTube, so today we're going to be talking real quick about why the Carcano is so slow and why people say it is such an impossibly heavy bolt to open and what exactly causes that. So, to start off, I will simply say that it is probably the hardest bolt action to open on the military surplus market out there, probably in all existence. This is, out of my experience, the hardest bolt action rifle to cock, just sheerly the amount of strength it requires to open that bolt, to set that firing pin, work that spring back and all that. Anyways, so we're going to get into why that is. Two of the main reasons why: mechanically, the design of the slope, so to say, I'll show you here that in a second, is what causes it. And then another thing too is the ejector and the spring system and the trigger. All of these have a huge factor of to making this rifle less than quick. My camera cut out there, sorry. So just on a side note, I'll be making another video about this. This Carcano is slick as butter. It's probably smoother than any of the bolt action rifles I own, but that is partly because I have worked on it a tad bit, and I'll get into that later. Anyways, I'll get into that on a separate video. So we'll start out with this little fella in here. So it's gonna be a little tricky to see. That guy there, let me get in a different angle. So I apologize for the lighting, but this little fella here, that little nub that you can see right here, is your ejector. And so inside your trigger system, there is one great big spring in here that controls the tension that keeps the trigger forward. It controls the sear back here. It also controls the bolt release. It's another separate plate that elevates up and down when you pull the trigger. And it also has the tension on this ejector. So it's hard to show you, but this ejector can work up and down. So what's happening with the bolt when you push it forward, particularly what makes it less than smooth, so to say, is that it runs in this little channel here, and this channel progressively gets shallower and shallower until basically there is no channel. And so what happens because of that is you have friction on this that is forcing up against this channel, and progressively the further you go in, the harder the spring tension is against the bolt. So with that being said, that's the first, but probably not the worst, feature of this design in this bolt action system. What ultimately is the Achilles heel to this type of system is its cocking piece. So I will show you real quick. I personally love this. I think it's a very clever, very simple design. I actually like it a lot, but it just doesn't lend itself to be very fast. And here's why. So this little slope here is what this rides on every time you open the bolt. So this sits inside the receiver, and then when you open the bolt handle, he has to ride up this. I can do this with the thumb right now because I have a lighter spring in it just for demonstration purposes. But normally you have a very heavy spring in here because you need obviously reliable spring pressure so that you can ensure a reliable primer strike. It is what keeps the gun, so to say, so reliable under any circumstances. You can ensure that thing really snaps home when you pull the trigger. Anyways, with that being said, the Achilles heel, of course, is that angle of that slope. So I don't have a Mauser 98 action, I don't have a Mosin to show you, but an example would be if you look at the same thing that this rides along to get to its set piece, like this. There you go. So that's basically what's happening. It's a much wider, so to say, bolt body. So this circle here, imagine this shank so to be a little thicker, creates a very even slope that rides nice and shallow and consistently up. So the best example is just think of it as a nice angled up like this versus the Carcano is something like this. So very literally, if I could put it in the most simplest way I could think of. Imagine this was a hill you had to ride up on your bicycle. So yeah, it wouldn't take that long, so to say, if you could go at a consistent speed, but the amount of energy you would need to exert to get up that slope in the same amount of time would be very difficult, and thus why this bolt is so unbelievably difficult to work is just solely because of that slope, and partly because of the spring tension. I feel if they just had a lighter spring in there on the inside of this, along with a lighter spring on this here, it would probably be the fastest, slickest action ever. Well, maybe not the fastest, but certainly one of the smoothest of all time. If you've ever handled a Gewehr 98 or any kind of K98 Mauser that's in decent condition, you'll know what I mean. They're very, very slick to operate. They're very smooth. And a lot of it's just to design. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the Carcano actions. They're a very sturdy, reliable, well-made gun. I just think that, mechanically speaking, they were designed slower than a K98 or a Gewehr 98. So it's not because the Italians made crappy guns. They've been making guns probably before any country in existence. So I think they would know their stuff. With that being said, it's just an inherently slow design, so to say. And obviously this is a bent bolt. The bent bolts, in my opinion, are a little bit more difficult to work just because you don't get that leverage, versus if you have a straight bolt, you can really just work that thing. So versus this kind of tucked away, there's not a cutout, so it's really hard to kind of get that leverage to open it. Not saying it can't be done, but it's just not the most ideal thing. And with that being said, the original Carcanos did have straight bolts. So just a tad bit of information. Hopefully maybe this brought about a new opinion to somebody, maybe just some useless info, maybe it was entertaining. Regardless, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.